November 1952, Bill was stationed in Kodiak, Alaska. This is an aerial view of the island. This picture was taken at the base of Kodiak Naval Air Station. This is a MATS military air transport plane. Downtown Kodiak. This is the same picture taken in the winter. The same street at night with the time exposure. This was the only bus stop in Kodiak. You had to board a bus there in order to get to the base if you didn't have a car. The USO building in Kodiak, where we spent many evenings. City Hall is on the left, and the background is the jail of Kodiak. Donnelly and Atchison was a department store in Kodiak. It was actually over the water. This was the photography store in town. Totem poles tell a picture. The one in the middle was me, pregnant with Kathy. Kodiak Hotel, the only one in town at that time. This was our backyard. What a beautiful sight. And like any other city, they had parades, mostly military, no floats. This was a brand new school that was put up while we were there. This is a picture of the Baptist church where we attended. This church was the Russian Orthodox Church. When we first moved to Kodiak, we lived in an apartment that was over this bay. It's hard to see from this viewpoint, but we had the view of the water and the seaplane base. This is the Russian Orthodox Cemetery. The seaplane was not too far from where we lived, and we'd watch these planes go in and out as they would go to the different islands to drop off supplies. This is looking down also where we used to live with the mountains in view. Believe it or not, this was the fire hall. This is what we refer to as Kodiak suburbs. This is one of the more beautiful sights that we were able to see. We first bought a home up there in January of 1953. Not too far from the house was a lake. In the winter, it was a beautiful sight. We had next door neighbors who were civilians, and their children came over often to visit us. This is an inside picture of the Russian Orthodox Church. The small house on the left was ours, our very first home that we paid $3,000 for and owned. Not much, but it was ours. This was a main street. Soon a developer came by and decided to put up prefabricated homes. This is a before picture. And this is after the home was completed. We were hoping the Navy would help to fill the vacancies of these homes, but it kind of fell through. Looking down in the valley was nothing but prefab homes. This again was the lake near our home. Little Stephen came over to visit us often. And this is another view of our backyard. First time we could pick out a tree in our own yard. As you see, Stephen would bring his kitty cat over to visit us also. This was that beautiful snow-covered lake in the wintertime. It wasn't so pretty in the summertime. That's me doing dishes before dishwashers were invented. Now heavy with child, I was putting money in the piggy bank. We used oil for cooking, heating, and hot water. There was no way to regulate the stove, and in the summertime, when we turned it off, we had no hot water, and it was not too easy to cook. We also managed to have a dog up there. It was a golden retriever, and her name was Ginger. This is our spacious bathroom that also had our hot water heater in it and a washer. We traded in the old iron bed for a sofa bed since we only had one large room. Bill was very talented and made me this lovely rack for this tea set, but we had to leave it there because he nailed it into the wall. Then in August 9th, 1953, we celebrated our first wedding anniversary with our next door neighbors, the Jarvellas. That's our dining room furniture. Notice the lovely easy chair and the two side chairs. Very uncomfortable. We often had get-togethers with people that were stationed up in Kodiak with us. Never a dull moment. And here we are slicing our very first wedding anniversary cake. Later to celebrate with a dinner next door. They even celebrate Halloween in Kodiak. And these people were real characters. That's our first, or actually our second Christmas, but our first Christmas in Kodiak, and we cut down the tree that's behind us. It was so big that with the sofa bed open, Bill slept underneath the branches of tinsel. We found a beach. No sand, just lava. A little bit sore on the feet. Santa Claus lives in the North Pole, and I guess his first stop must be Kodiak before heading to the east. After stopping at Jarvella's first. We often entertained the single sailors up there and had them to dinner. It was a great treat for them to be off the base. We had some good friends and many good times, and would spend many evenings playing cards just to pass the time. This is some of nature's unspoiled beauty. This was somebody's celebration. Steak, anyway. Then one night, a lieutenant asked us to babysit. So we did, and took our friends and played with the children's toys. This shot was taken looking toward the town and away from the base. There are two crash boats in the foreground in case any of the planes had trouble landing. We had many picnics and many good times, and this was a steak roast. There are planes on the landing strip next to the Old Woman Mountain. A lot of planes up there. And this one could see through the ice and snow to get a better perspective of where the land was. The mountain to the left is called the Pyramid Mountain. The large mountain on the right was called the Old Woman Mountain. This is the infirmary on the base where January 8th, 1954, Kathy made her grand appearance. When she was 10 days old, we ventured up to the ski chalet. I didn't go skiing, but enjoyed watching. This was outside the chalet. Some spectacular scenery you'll never see again. This place was taken where we were just skiing, and you couldn't get out there any further than there in the wintertime. The pink flowers come in the early fall, and the old timers say when they reach the top of the mountains that it's time for snow again. Some more spectacular scenery. These were civilians on the base, bud and furl, and anytime we had an occasion to celebrate, we really did it up right. We were fortunate enough to have extremely good neighbors, and they would loan us their car, whenever they weren't using it. In fact, they would just leave the keys in it for whenever we wanted to take some side trips. This is one of them. This hairpin curve was the road that you took out to where the skiing was done. This road probably was safer in the wintertime with the snow pile on the side than it was in the summer. None of the roads were paved up there, they were all gravel. The further out you got on the base, the more beautiful and spectacular the scenery. As you can see, the water is calm, it's in the summer, and there's still snow on the mountains. These are the Churies. Bill met John on the way up to Kodiak. They were on the same plane. We became very good friends, and they would bring their little boy by often. In the summer of 1988, we visited with them again. They now live in Rhode Island. They haven't changed a bit. Out on the base, if you were brave enough, you could go in the icy water just to say that you were in the bay of Kodiak. These were more good friends. He was from Massachusetts and she was from California. They later retired in California, where Ken became an author. That bathing beauty is me. I didn't look too bad. The size of the beach wasn't much longer than that blanket. We went out quite often with Churies. One day we took a small fishing boat to another island and found this abandoned Russian church. As we were waiting to come back, this LSD ship passed by. It's a landing ship where the front of it opens so everything can come out, the amphibians. And this was a fishing boat. Salmon are plentiful up there as well as king crab. These were other friends that we met, the Moyers. They were also from California. This was taken from the top of one of the mountains looking back toward the base. And one day they had a baseball game between the officers, the enlisted men, and their families. A good time was had by all. This picture was also taken in the middle of the summer. The water was blue and crystal clear. I even braved to get in. I think my legs were as blue as the water when I came out. This was the commissary on the base where we would go to purchase our food. More breathtaking scenery. It was so deserted it was almost gave you a haunted feeling to be out there with no people. For some reason somebody constructed a bridge, but we don't know why, because there was nothing there but that small strip of grass. The mountain out front was, in the front of the picture, is all rock. There was no vegetation at all on it. The reason that the sand is so dark was because there were many active volcanoes up there. So instead of sand, it was volcanic ash. This is a Kodiak king crab. Taken from the top of the supply building. That's the chapel on the base, and next to it is the infirmary. Even though it was a Navy base, the Air Force often would bring their jets in. It's the big Pyramid Mountain to the left. This is a picture of the key billet housing, which was for officers. We weren't so fortunate. We were just enlisted people, so we had to live in town. This mountain is at the end of the runway, and before I went up there, I was told by somebody that had just come back that if the plane didn't land in the bay, I shouldn't worry because the mountain was at the other end. Supplies would come in about twice a month, bringing us all fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, and meat from the States. The cost of living was extremely expensive up there for civilians. The water lily in the middle happens to be Bill. We would also go to the enlisted men's club to play bingo and have steak dinners. On the wall is mounted a polar bear. And this is the flag of Alaska, the North Star and the Big Dipper. About twice a month, we would go to the base for steak dinners. We even got dressed up. It's Kenny Joy Richardson again. The civilians next to us are the Jarvellas, our dear next door neighbors. This young couple was Rosemary and Bud Norton. One day somebody got a brainy idea to go clam digging. It wasn't my idea of having a good time. However, we survived. We drove to every part of the island we could possibly get to, trying to get as much of the scenery as possible. That's a picture of John Paul Chury. And this is the supply center on the base where Bill worked. As I said, we were good friends with Chury's and often had cookouts and hot dog roasts and mostly enjoyed their company. That's Lois and John in front of Lupin. The small island is in the middle of a crater. We were lucky enough to be able to get out that far. These pictures were taken in February of 1954. Snow all around, and the water was just beautiful. This picture's pretty enough to be on a postcard. This was the other end of the island called Fort Abercrombie. And there she is making her debut for the first time, Kathy Ann. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, and probably 4 or 5 days old. When she was 10 days old, we ventured up to the ski chalet on the base, but this plow had to come through first in order to open the roads. Bill, being from the deep south, thought this picture reminded him of a snowstorm, when indeed it was only about 15 degrees out and really blowing snow, not sand at all. The days were very short in the winter time. The sun would come up around 10 and go down around 3. So this was taken somewhere around noon and 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And there she is posing quite nicely for us. This is a better view of the ski chalet on the base. And John Paul having such fun eating the snow. He didn't mind the cold at all. He's just ready there to have somebody pull him away. Kathy getting down to business. People waiting in line for the tow ropes. And 6 weeks old, she could really hold her head up straight. Look at that head of hair. And such a happy baby. No, that isn't what you think it is. That's the color of the water up there. No wonder she was pouting. Now all nice and clean, she was snuggled in her blanket with her first stuffed toy. Trying not to miss anything going around. Whoops! She almost fell over that picture. And that was her menagerie of toys. We were so poor we couldn't even afford print bumpers. Kathy Kathy didn't mind, though. She was a happy baby. And every day when possible, she was outside taking her morning nap in buggy number 1, which we had to store underneath the crib because our house was so small. And that's her first and only nudie picture, I hope. And this is my favorite. In April of 1954, we left Kodiak, Alaska to come back to the States. We landed in Tacoma, Washington, and had enough time to take a side trip to Victoria, British Columbia. It looked so strange to see such green grass after being in such a gray place for such a long time. We took a ship, and in the background is Mount Baker in California. It looked like strawberry ice cream. This was the British ship that we were on. And this is us pulling into Victoria, a beautiful little city. This is the Parliament building. And the beautiful gardens. And beautiful colors. You don't realize how beautiful color is until you've been away for it for such a long time. It almost seemed unreal. Kathy with her feet in the grass for the first time. And the beautiful rhododendron. Then it was back aboard the ship to head back to Washington. Kathy did manage to take a little nap in the grass. And this is another picture of the Parliament building. After getting back to Seattle, Washington, we boarded a train and headed south to Northern California. This is a picture of Mount Shasta in California. It's another picture of Mount Shasta. At the time, it was the only active volcano in the United States. And this was lava that had spewed from the train. After we settled in California, we took a trip to the Fleshhiker Zoo, which is in San Francisco. And that's the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. And Alcatraz, no longer being used as a state penitentiary. And the Fleshhiker Zoo again. And Kathy with her pink shoes. Another side trip to the zoo. Patty, I like that car. We paid $300 for that thing and drove it 3,000 miles. And we were lucky enough to live in a Quonset hut in California. What an experience. Pink shoes can keep a little girl happy for a long time. Then we went to a fairyland in Oakland, California, all geared for small children. This was before Disneyland. Kathy was so happy that we were going out again. He was a little young to enjoy these pictures. So we're recording them, just a reminder. He wasn't too impressed. And took a nap in buggy number 2. Oh well, the parents had a good time anyway in this small park. Don't you think she's smart for being 5 months old? You had to duck to get under the old woman's shoe in order to get into the park. And the rooster nicely crowed for us as Bill took the shot. This picture was taken so long ago, I wonder if this park is still remaining. Happy girl again. Back in those days, they were called rumba pants. And believe it or not, you girls, this was the original car seat. She didn't care if it only cost $2.98. One day we took a ride to the Redwood Village. That's a picture of a crosscut of a redwood tree. This kid really got around. And then one night she sang for her supper. After eating her shoes. And smiling nicely. Then it was her turn to read the Sunday Funnies. We also visited the Japanese gardens in Oakland, California. This was a very unusual place. That was called a Half Moon Bridge. And of course, the pagoda. Then we headed east, but we had to cross the desert and stop so Kathy could pose on this bucking bronco, or rather, longhorn steer. We drove out of our way to see nothing but more desert, and this is a picture of the concession stand at the Painted Desert. In the background is the Painted Desert. We saw desert for about 1,000 miles as we drove toward the east. They do a lot of filming out here with western scenes. I don't know who would want to film there. It sure was a desolate place. And as we crossed into New Mexico, every once in a while you'd see what they called a mountain. And then along the way were Navajo Indians selling rugs. Then we finally came to Naples, Texas. This is where Bill's parents lived and had small cabins for rent. That's a picture of Pop Graves. This is Aunt Jane and Uncle Jim. They had just gotten married, and that was their new car. I believe it was a 1954 Chevrolet. Then we traveled east to Philadelphia, where Nana and Pop Hunter lived on Hasbrook Avenue. And this is Nana Hunter in the rose garden in the backyard. This was Pop feeding his pride and joy. They didn't get to see her till she was 6 months old. Kathy was christened in the church that we were married in by Reverend Holloway. And that is Uncle Ted with Nana and Pop Hunter and Bill and I on her christening day. This is Nana and Pop Hunter out front of Aunt Peg Fleming's house after Kathy's christening. Everybody was so proud of her. This is before we went into Aunt Peg's house for dinner. Oh, that's me in that beautiful car again. Like that sun visor. And this is Aunt Peg Fleming's house on Seminole Avenue in Fox Chase Manor. And this is Cousin Peggy. Pop Hunter holding his goddaughter. And Nana Hunter inside Aunt Peg's home with Kathy, her namesake. This is Cousin Peggy and Bruce, Aunt Peg's children. Kathy was very happy to pose for everyone. And that's Aunt Peg. With her friend Dot and her son Bruce, me in the middle. This is Pop Hunter and Aunt Thelma. Kathy likes sitting on the grass at Mother's house and playing with the next door neighbor's wheelbarrow. That's her cousin Nancy Lee Hunter, just 9 months older than Kathy. Nancy again, showing her teeth. Pop Hunter had a gas station down on Cotman Street. Isn't that a wonderful shot? Gas was probably, oh, I can see the sign, 21 cents a gallon. And that's Pop Hunter in action. And we took a trip up to the Pocono Mountains. This was overlooking the valley. And then we went to the wild animal farm with Uncle Ted and one of his friends. And there's Bill holding Kathy with a reindeer trying to get some food. I want you girls to notice that we got dressed up in the 50s, including high heels and a suit to a wild animal farm. That black sheep just wanted to follow us everywhere we went. So it's also taken in the Poconos at Indian Ladder Falls. And we took a trip to Ocean City, New Jersey. I think the sun was in our eyes. Then we ventured back to Texas. Bill's sister wanted to show us how she could climb a pole. And Jim makes it look so easy. And here we are, the 5 of us, back in Naples, Texas. This is Nana Graves, Pop Graves, Aunt Jane, Uncle Jim, myself, and Kathy. This is also Nana and Pop Graves. And then we finally got an apartment in Beaumont, Texas. Those welts on Kathy are not chicken pox, but in fact, mosquito bites. Then we began the fun of feeding ourselves. And being potty trained at a very early age. Playful as a pup. She could really wrinkle up that little snoot. There, I thought she was going to be a politician. Wearing the handmade coat and hat from Nana Graves. This is the beautiful scenery in Texas, otherwise known as Spindletop, and they're all oil wells. Bill told me his dad was in the oil business too. I didn't know it was too late until it was too late that he meant a gas station. Lots of oil down there, and then there are barren places. Then there's the wonderful Lucas Gusher that brought wealth to Texas. Not much scenery, but lots of wealth. Bill had to get a picture of this. This ship was from Philadelphia, and it was down there loading up with crude oil. He thought that was rather funny. You've heard of the song Galveston? Well, that's part of it, with the fishermen. Like I said, we were rather poor. We didn't have too much money in those days. Poor Kathy had to use an old box and a belt for a wagon, but she didn't seem to mind. And Nana Hunter came to Texas, and Nana Graves drove 250 miles and spent a few days with us so we could take Nana Hunter to show her the sights of Texas. She could do so big at 9 months old. And rock herself to sleep in this little chair. Then we went to a rodeo, a real rodeo. It took us about 5 hours to get there, and the car overheated, but it was a real rodeo. Actually, the group in the background are prisoners, and the small group right in the center are the really, really hard criminals. Sometimes the prisoners would be allowed to participate in the rodeo, and they would ride the Brahma bulls, or the bucking broncos. At least they got them out of their jail cell for a while. You can see they've taken the bad guys out. I don't know what they did with them, but that place in the middle was empty. Now this is Kathy's first Halloween, and believe it or not, she was wearing my first Halloween costume. What an antique. She's supposed to be Minnie Mouse. And we were fortunate enough again to have wonderful neighbors, and this is Diana. She was Kathy's first playmate. Another political pose. And Diana Wallace with a Christmas tree. And on Santa's lap. And Kathy's first Christmas was Santa Claus. That taffy was pretty good. And this was the night before Christmas with our beautiful handmade fireplace in her first little nightgown. She was so good she even put the tinsel back on the tree. Not a year old yet and walking all over the place. That's her first buggy with her first baby doll. And finally Santa bought her a real wagon with wheels. Oh, down in Texas they have dams. They couldn't think of names, so they named them A, B, C, or D, and I think this was Dam B. And we traveled 250 miles up to Naples, Texas to celebrate Christmas with Nana and Papa Graves. They gave her a riding horse. I wonder why. And lots of other noisy toys. Kathy took it all in stride. This is Delma and Bert and Diana Wallace. They lived in front of us down in Beaumont. Our very first birthday. With her fluffy organdy dress that took forever to iron. And she learned at an early age to stack blocks. Jane and Jim came to visit us one time when we took a trip to Houston. That's aboard the battleship, her little red wagon. She got to be real good with handling a glass. We took another trip up to Naples. We went up there quite often to visit Bill's parents. This is the San Jacinto Monument. This is also in Houston. And this is our first Easter bunny. Dainty little thing. It was almost as big as she was. It was hard to take her picture because she wouldn't walk. She wanted to run. This is a picture with Diana and her baby brother. While we were in Texas, Bill went to Lamar College. That's the college in the background. We also went to the azalea gardens that were down on the Gulf. And that's a man eating clamshell. This is Bill with his pink shirt to match the pink azaleas. Now they had parades in Texas too. These are the Texas Beauties. She was truly a daddy's girl. And would perform at a drop of a hat. Even if it meant smushing cake all over the floor. Bill started his career out of high school working at the White House. It wasn't the Capitol, it was a department store in Beaumont. This was the queen of the parade. The king looked like the Rockledge cop. More of those Texas beauties. And their beautiful gowns. That's Uncle Jim. He used to work at a gas station. He's now a judge. He came a long way. This was the Natchez River Festival Parade. Kathy was really strong and well balanced and could stand on Bill's hands very easily. This is Aunt Thelma with Nancy and Kathy and I when we had come up to Philadelphia to visit Nana and Pop Hunter. That's Cousin Janet with Harry. What a big bruiser he was. There's Kathy performing again. Look at those muscles. And Kathy with her friend Diana. And that's Aunt Peg and Peggy and me. And Bruce, doesn't he look angelic? We went back to Texas only to say goodbye. Bill was being transferred to Philadelphia, so we visited his people in Naples, Texas before coming east, where Kathy got her first pair of cowgirl boots. See how they can dance? This was the ferry to Galveston. And the tedious job of curling that hair. This is how we get our watermelon in Philadelphia. They grow it in Texas, load it on the trains, and ship it north. So the story goes. These flowers were called amaryllis. And that's where we lived for almost a year in Texas, over a 3-car garage. It was called a garage apartment. Kathy learned at an early age what a telephone was for. She liked to kiss everybody goodbye. And this is downtown Naples. It almost looked like something from an old West scene. They don't drink water in Texas. Coke's the thing. Right from the bottle. And at an early age, she was taught how to play the piano. This is the Port Arthur Bridge. And some of Bill's relatives that had come to say goodbye to us as we journeyed east. As you can see, the cupboards were bare, but they all came over to bring us food and wish us well. This is Bill's Aunt Hazel and his cousin George. His cousin Sis. And Thelma and Diana and the baby. More Graves relatives. Halloween, and we're now in Philadelphia. These are friends of Bill's, the Seguras. This was taken in Warrington at the pumpkin patch. Kathy was overwhelmed. She'd only seen watermelon in Texas. And as always, a perfect little lady at such a young age. It's harvest time again. And Halloween. Nancy wearing Jimmy's first costume, and Kathy wearing mine for the second year in a row. And it's the annual Thanksgiving Day parade in Philadelphia. The traditional Thanksgiving dinner at Nana Hunter's. Lots of parades. Even bagpipes. And that
You see that blink, and that means it's recording. As soon as I push it, you ready to talk?
Yeah, the one you mounted. This is the Gimbals Parade. Neighbors from down the street on Hasbrook Avenue. Lois Siebert with her sister Marilyn, her baby Jamie. It's Kathy trying on Aunt Grace's hat. And also climbing up and down the steps. Trying to make friends with Tinker, my family's dog. Hanging up her stocking at Christmas time. This is Christmas Eve on Hasbrook Avenue in 1956. All those gifts were for Kathy. She got a nice new red bike. Helped opening packages. Got her little Bissell's cleaner out so she could help clean up the mess. Got her baby in the cradle. Helped Nancy Lee unwrap her gifts. And then shared her little red fire engine with Nancy. While Pop Hunter watched television, her dad took a picture of Kathy feeding Nancy chalk. And then they sort of squabbled over the fire engine. But Pop came to the rescue. Kathy managed to get in the fire engine. Then it was time to feed her baby. Nancy decided she'd have a cup of tea. Ron Morton, one of Uncle Jim's boyfriends, stopped by. And Aunt Thelma had painted Pop-Pop's Hunter's gas station windows for the holidays. Cousin Bruce with his new gun. Peggy was an Abington ghost. And that's Cousin Harry Van Artsdalen. And our friend's little boy Glenn. And Ken and Joy Richardson. That's Daddy and I with Kathy. This is your cousin Don Fleming with one of his girlfriends. He was in the Air Force and home on leave. Kathy celebrated her second birthday at Nana Hunter's house. It was always party time. It's Cousin Harry Van Artsdalen and Cousin Bruce Fleming. Cousin Ginger Noose. And our house on Ripley Street was our first big snowfall. We even had a one-horse sled come down the street. Kathy played with the little girl next door, Debbie Bell. That's 1017 Ripley Street. I was a blonde then. Kathy liked feeding her jelly beans to the dog and smushing her chocolate egg in her hands. She helped Aunt Grace celebrate her birthday. And that's Aunt Peg. This picture was entered into a contest and Kathy was one of the winners. It was a living doll contest. That's what we thought she was. The girls playing house. We still had that old car. That's me. And this is Kathy at the side of our house. She was a real American beauty. We had a large backyard, so we had picnics for every holiday. That's Ginger playing badminton. And Kathy all dressed up for some holiday, white gloves and all. And that was our first swimming pool. We couldn't afford a bathing suit for her. And we took a trip to the zoo. Pink flamingos. The Bengal tigers. The African lion. The other large cats. The baby kangaroo here peeking out of its mother's pouch. The beautiful peacock. Two-humped camel, and baby Fran with Aunt Thelma. She wasn't too fond of spinach, but she was a happy baby. Kathy had a kitty cat for a while. There she was taking off her shoes. I guess her feet were killing her. That's Peggy doing the hula. And she was a baton thrower at Abington High School. That's me. Uncle Ted had a Cadillac in those days. It was a convertible. This was the annual Jean's Hospital Fair. Kathy loved riding amusements. It's back to the pumpkin patch. Halloween, 1956. Kathy's wearing the same Halloween costume 3 years in a row. That's Louise Schwinn, our Nana's next door neighbor, with some of the neighborhood children. Uncle Ted was the old man. And then who should come visit us but Aunt Peg on the left, Bruce on the right, Peggy in the middle in the green and white, and 3 of her girlfriends. What a surprise that was. And the bum there was me. I was 5 months pregnant with Susan, and Kathy is holding my hand. That little ghost was Nancy Lee Hunter. It's Thanksgiving time again. And this was taken at Wanamaker's. They always had a beautiful display for the holidays. Now we graduated to a cardboard fireplace for the night before Christmas. Someplace to hang our stockings. Our Christmas tree took up half the living room. Kathy was just thrilled with everything. Santa even left her a black horse at Nana Hunter's house. And that's Frances Marie Hunter with Pop Pop Hunter. Nancy Lee is thrilled with her new little dress. Fran and Kathy, buddies to this day. Uncle Jim, doesn't he look dapper with that hat? Pop Pop with his girls. And that's Frances with Nana. Nana and Pop Pop Hunter. Uncle Ted and Frances. Franny enjoying that thumb. And even trying to ride the horse. This was a Christmas display in Abington. Now it was time for Kathy's 3rd birthday. She and Nancy had fun blowing their favors at each other. Kathy cheating, playing pin the tail on the donkey. And her Susan Eileen Graves, February 8th, 1957. The diaper was bigger than she was. It's bath time again. And all snuggled and warm again. Daddy's turn to have his picture taken. That didn't happen too often. Kathy with her new baby sister. Nana Graves made her the outfit she's wearing, and I made the slipcovers. This was Trinity Church, Oxford in Philadelphia, where Daddy and I were married. Kathy and Susan were both christened there. Miss Krista Hollerley holding Susan on christening day. That's Daddy and I with baby Susan. Aunt Peg and Uncle Butch were the godparents. And afterward we went to Nana Hunter's house. Pop Pop Hunter finally got to hold Susan. She was all tuckered out. That'd been a long day. Relaxing in my easy chair. Now it's Easter time again. Kathy showing us Susan's tiny basket. We even went to sunrise service that year. This This was taken about 6 o'clock in the morning. Baby and all, we went to church. Susan in her first Easter outfit. This was taken at Valley Forge in May. These are dogwoods. This is also at Valley Forge Park. And a close-up of the pink dogwood. And they're a mixture of both. With bright golden tulips. And beautiful deep pink azaleas. More azaleas. And baby Susan, believe it or not, this was in May and it was bitter cold. Kathy even wore her snowsuit. She was a real ham when it came to taking pictures when she was quite young. Narrowed girls together, sucking their thumbs. Daily routine of brushing the teeth. And turning off her light before going to bed. Susan enjoyed being on her bassinet. Wasn't so happy with Kathy holding her. She wanted to get down. It was probably either Mother's Day or Children's Day. Naturally, we're dressed up in our finest. And then we went to Aunt Thelma's for a picnic. Kathy was going to golf for a while. And Susan enjoyed playing with her little yellow ducky. This is Memorial Day. We had a picnic, and Uncle Ted was jumping up our roof trying to retrieve a bird from when they were playing badminton. Granny got it. And that's Pop Hunter. This was Claire, a friend of Peggy's. She entertained us with her accordion. Picnic times were such fun times. That's Aunt Thelma and Fran. And then we took a trip up to the Poconos. To Stanton's Barn. This is in New Hope. Not New Hope, rather. It's in, up in northern Jersey. This is in the land of make-believe. And this is looking down the parkway in Philadelphia toward William Penn. The skyline has changed by now. Nana, Pop, and Aunt Jane came from Texas up to Philadelphia to visit with us. That's Aunt Jane holding Susan and Kathy next to her. That's Nana and Pop graves with Kathy and Susan. And we took a side trip to New York and the boat to see the Statue of Liberty. That's the skyline of New York City in 1957. And this was taken from the Empire State Building. That's the Chrysler Building with the point. And Central Park in the foreground. And that's the Hudson River. More of the Hudson River. really see for miles at the top of this building. That's looking down toward the business center. That's some of the apartment dwellings in New York City. This is Rockefeller Center, Rockefeller Plaza. And we took a trip again up to Pocono Mountains to the Wild Animal Farm. And this time, Susan was the infant. The bear cub, the roaming deer, they were so tame. And this is a winding river along the Delaware Canal. That's Miss Annie. She lived up the mountains. That was her brother Arthur. Charming people. Susan was a chubby little baby. And a happy one. She didn't even mind going to bed. And Susan, all sticky after eating a taffy, and showing us how she could do so big. Taffy thought she was quite funny, and sometimes she really was. Believe it or not, that's the mayor of Philadelphia. That's Richardson Dilworth. Taffy was in a parade at Fox Chase, and he was part of the parade. This was taken up at Lake Wallenpaupack. And Susan, she didn't care where we took her as long as she was included. Kathy insisted that she could walk. But Susan just preferred to stay in her bed and sometimes sing. Here we are back at Jean's Fair the next year. Kathy in the same, probably in the same car that she was in the year before. Here she is still trying to get Susan to walk. And that was our family portrait for that year. Christmas again. Time to hang up an extra stocking, this time for Susan. She still didn't want to walk. She finally decided it was time. And enjoyed chewing on rubber beads. Santa had come to Ripley Street, now had to bring toys for two little girls. And Kathy got a big bite. And there's Susan all decked out. The girls in their party dresses. And this is Ginger Noose down at Nana Hunter's house. Now you can notice we changed the color of the house from pink and gray to turquoise and white. They were the colors of those days. Susan in her first big snowfall. And the snowman that was built by Daddy. This was Susan's first birthday. Kathy in a red fire engine. Now she has to share it with Susan. Her new dolly. And Susan looked like a little sheep. It's Easter Bunny time. And we had to wear rainwear with our Easter finery that year. This is Nana Hunter and Kathy and I going to a wedding. This was taken down in Beaumont, Texas, where we went to visit. That's Pop Graves and Daddy's dog Queenie. It's Aunt Jane and Uncle Jim with Kathy and Susan. We visited them at their apartment in Houston. And that was the complex where they live. Pudgy little Susan. And these were some of their relatives from Texas. Daddy's cousin George and his wife, Bev. This was Pop Graves. And this was taken at a park down in Houston. Susan was quite bored with the whole thing. Back to drinking Coke again, right out of the bottle. And these were friends of Daddy's. And we visited with the Thelma and Diana Wallace. Visit Thelma and Bert Wallace with their little boy. This is Pop Graves again. And then we came back to Philadelphia. This was Children's Day in 1957, 58. This is the 4th of July parade in Cheltenham, Pennsylvania. Susan enjoying her bowl of spaghetti. What a mess. Now Uncle Jim became a policeman in Lower Moreland Township. That's he with Nancy Lee in front of their house in Huntington Valley. And Cousin Ginger got married to Chuck Stair. He was from California. They came to Aunt Grace's house so we could all get to meet with him. This was a family picture at Aunt Grace Noose's house. We took Susan and Kathy swimming to a lake in Jersey. Susan loved the water and would just be contented to float all day. Couldn't keep her away from the water. Debbie Bell was a flower girl for her brother's wedding. They were our next door neighbors. And we had a swing set in the backyard where Kathy and Susan spent many hours. Wasn't she cute? Once she started walking, she wanted to run. Kathy had a hula hoop. That's Uncle Ted and Aunt Betty, Aunt Mary Frame, and Cousin Peggy. This is before Betty and Ted were married. Kathy had a real leather jacket at the age of 3. This was Uncle Jim and Grease. And this was Aunt Thelma. And Susan, we had to keep her hair short because it wouldn't curl. Aunt Betty and Uncle Ted before they were married. And then it was Christmas time again. Kathy was so happy with everything. And Susan was contented with her little doll. Randy was excited with everything. And so was Aunt Thelma. Look at the eyes. And Nana was so happy. And that's Kathy and Susan. Or not Kathy and Susan, excuse me, it's Nancy Lee and Kathy. And this was Cousin Don. He had come home on leave for the holidays. This is Nana up at Aunt Peg's house. We could finally afford to put lights around our house at Christmas time. And Ken and Joy had 2 boys, and they came to visit us for the holidays. And there are the 2 boys and the 2 girls. Oh my goodness, what is that? Oh, I shot another one. Kathy posing she was going to modeling classes for a while. Susan tried to do the same thing. And we got a little Shelby dog named Holly. They loved her, but she wasn't too well, and she died when she was only 6 weeks old. Susan loved her little rocking chair. Kathy posing in front of our new bedroom furniture. These girls were dressed up all the time. Kathy was modeling at Stellenberg's, a store that used to be on Philadelphia. And now it's Easter time. Now you can tell we only take pictures at holidays. While Bill took the picture, Susan stuffed her mouth. And that's Kathy and Susan, and they pregnant with Beth. This was also taken down in Texas. And that's relatives of Daddy's. Taken when Pop Graves died. And that was your Aunt Jack and Uncle Heath.
And Hazel
and Uncle Fack. Cousin Sis with her little boy Doug. And Nana Graves holding Stephen, Jane and Jim's little boy. And this is Aunt Jane with Stephen. Another picture of Stephen. And Stephen and his daddy Jim. This was out front of back in Hazel's house. This was all on the grave side of the family. It was a solemn occasion. And Jim and Stephen. This is his little boy Doug. Susan among the azaleas. And Kathy, Susan, Len, and Stacy. We took them to Friends Hospital at azalea time. And Ken and Joy. And that's me. More beautiful scenery. And in the city of Philadelphia. So many people don't even know that it exists. Susan called Stacy Daisy, and we really teased her a lot. There they are, hand in hand, strolling down the lane with their baby. And this was Memorial Day. Red, white, and blue. They were the colors of the day. Even the roses were blooming. And this was another dog. Don't ask me what this one was. This was July 3rd, 1959. That's Beth Lynn. Hi. Nice picture with Beth. It's only 18 inches long. Here she is, the new kid on the block. And look at how skinny I was. Susan liked her baby sister as well. Loved holding her. There, it's her bath time too. Everybody's there for the bath. Wasn't she tiny? Everything was too big for her. Oops, Daddy got into this picture again. There we were. Here was Beth. Just sticking her tongue out at only a few weeks old. And she couldn't keep her booties on. We got a bigger swimming pool, and this time the girls even had bathing suits. This is Aunt Betty Collins. And this was taken at the Pocono Mountains. Beautiful spot for artists. This was the bridge at the foot of the road. And that's with Arthur and Miss Annie's field with the donkey. Susan trying to run up the hill. This is Tapawingo in Mountain Home, Pennsylvania. This was our summer home for many, many years. Kathy liked taking care of her baby sister. Oh, Daddy, there he is with his 3 girls. Good picture of the squirrel. This is Miss Annie again. And we went to the zoo. It seemed to be an annual trip. If you didn't know it, that's a hippo. The rhinoceros. Susan hanging over the fence. Kathy preferred the bronze hippo. And the giraffes sticking their necks out. While we were there, Amish people were visiting the zoo. They caused as much attention as the animals. And we went to Atlantic City, New Jersey. Beth was about 6 weeks old when we took this trip. This was another friend from the service who had stopped in to visit us. Beth looked completely bored. That's Susan. And this is baby Jimmy Hunter. He's just a month older than Beth. That's also baby Jimmy. And this was that sailor with our next door neighbor, Mary Lou. We tried to fix them up, but things just didn't work out. And this was Mary Lou Bellevue. That's the dress I almost wore in Uncle Ted's wedding, but Nana vetoed it. Kathy in her school outfit. We had a surprise shower for Aunt Betty. And that's Aunt Betty Collins with her mother, Trudy. She was really surprised. Betty and Ted were married in September 1959. The girls were dressed for the wedding, including the white gloves. That's the dress I wore. I was Betty's maid of honor. And that was Betty and her mother. The picture was taken on Ripley Street. They were married at Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Burholm. That's Cousin Harry standing in front of Betty. Daddy took these pictures. That's Uncle Jim on the right, Aunt Betty, Uncle Ted, and myself. The wedding reception was held at the Collins House in Levittown. And this was at the reception. Beth looked like a little frog with these leotards on. She too was a happy baby. This is taken at the Washington Monument. We spent a weekend in Washington, D.C. with our friends. And had quite a sightseeing trip. They were restoring the Capitol at the time. This picture was taken looking from the Custis Lee Mansion to the Washington Memorial. This was the Taft Memorial with the Carillons. This is a bronze statue of Robert Taft. And this is the Library of Congress. The Jefferson Memorial. Likewise, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. This is at Arlington National Cemetery. This was also taken from Arlington National Cemetery. And that's a view of the Custis Lee Mansion. The famous bronze statue of raising the flag at Iwo Jima. This is a fort down in Alexandria, Virginia. This is another picture of the fort. This is Mrs. Sterner. She used to stay in the cabin behind ours in the Pocono Mountains and enjoyed making rag rugs. And that was her friend. They had come to Nana's to visit. Miss Annie made patchwork quilts. That's Aunt Betty and Uncle Ted with her. Aunt Betty and Beth. Now it's turn for Beth's christening by the same pastor at the same church. Betty and Ted were godparents for Beth. That's Susan, Harry Van Artsdalen, Kathy over at the left, Bill and I in the background. Kathy Ann. Susan was a sound sleeper. Oh, I finally got a dishwasher. This was Christmas of 1959. Here Beth looks a little bit like Jacqueline. You couldn't keep her down. She wouldn't even pose. It sang at a very early age. This was when Peggy got married the first time. They were her in-laws. Kathy was flower girl at the wedding. Susan was just part of the congregation. Peggy with Bud, her first husband, and the wedding party. Peggy and Bud in the receiving line. That's Aunt Peg and Butch. And Aunt Thelma with Nancy and Franny. That's Nana and Pop-Pop at the reception. The bride and groom. Back to Beth. She didn't get to go to the wedding. She was a jitterbug even at an early age. Trying to see what was in that camera lens. She took off walking at 9 months of age. Now it's time for Easter again. The azaleas were in our backyard on Ripley Street. Beth just finished eating a taffy and was all sticky. This was taken at Fox Chase School in the playground. Susan loved swinging. Here she had an itch on her elbow. Beth was doing a solo. This is what was the wedding of Marilyn Siebert. Beth's first bathing suit, size 0. He's all set to go for a swim. And that was the rocking horse she had gotten from Nana and Pop-Pop Hunter. We had just finished doing the second floor of our house on Knotty Pine. So we had to get pictures while it looked pretty good. Then Jane and Jim came up from Texas with Stephen and Nana Graves to visit with us. It's Aunt Jane with Stephen. Susan. Susan and Kathy in front of Uncle Jim's car. Here we are back at the zoo again, only this time it's 2 on the bronze hippo. Jane and Jim. Nana Graves. Stephen. These were taken in 1960. Stephen was ready to take his bag and leave. And Jim, that's probably the most he opened his mouth the whole time he stayed with us. They're very quiet people. Now they're getting ready for their travel back south. Must have been about 4 o'clock in the morning. That's Aunt Betty with Beth and Aunt Grace. News. Now the girls upstairs. Now it was time for a baby shower for Peggy. These things always took place at our house for some reason. And as you can see, the room was jammed with gifts. Once again, it's Christmas. Tammy, Uncle Ted. And the room continues to get smaller as our family gets larger. Everybody got a new doll that year. Here's Beth. She looked pretty forlorn. She didn't know what to do. There's Pop-Pop Hunter with Kathy. And Susan with her dolly and her bassinet. You look like an angelic choir girl there. Now it's time to go back to the zoo again. And the Easter outfits, or Children's Day. It was hard to get Beth to hold still long enough to get her picture. Susan posed nicely. And it was time to take another trip down to Washington, D.C. This time in the fall. Picture of the Jefferson Monument was really taken, not in the fall, it was taken in the spring. We went down for the Cherry Blossom Festival. These are the cherry blossoms along the tidal bay. Some of the beautiful cherry trees. This is the capital of the United States. All the scaffolding was down by the time we returned in the early spring. Beautiful botanical gardens in Washington, D.C. And lots of bronze statues. This was taken at Washington's home in Arlington, Virginia. And this was part of the annual Cherry Festival parade. It was kind of chilly when we went down there. But we all love to watch parades. Pennsylvania was actually ice skating on that float as it went by. And here we are back home at Ripley Street again. Must have been Mother's Day. Susan's wearing a corsage. Beth had a flower on her hand. Then we went up to Kutztown, Pennsylvania to the Amish Fair. Now it's time for the Jeans Fair again, and they all look like the Dolly sisters. And we managed to have a kitty cat again, but just for a short time. And Kathy was a brownie. And then we were up at Aunt Peg's house. Susan with her new dolly. That devilish look in Beth's eyes. Look at that black eye. No, it wasn't child abuse. She fell out of her high chair. Oh, surprise, I got another new robe. See? Yellow and white. I was right. That's Cousin Bruce with Peggy's little boy, Jimmy. Peggy and Jimmy had come to spend the holidays with Aunt Peg and Butch. Uncle Butch was the best turkey carver we ever knew. And we had wonderful dinners at their home. This is Lee. He lived near Pop Station and became a very close friend of Daddy's. He was stationed in the Air Force. Here is Beth outside Mom's home. And Kathy. These girls had beautiful wardrobes, and everything matched. The monkey in the middle is Uncle Ted. I think he should have joined the circus. But he kept Aunt Peg and Nana entertained. You can tell it was picnic time again in our backyard. Nancy tried to play badminton. And this is Fran, Jimmy, and Nancy. That's Aunt Thelma and myself. Kathy and Susan in front of our poor little dogwood tree out front. Kathy had just had her beautiful long hair cut. It was the first time we'd seen her with short hair, and she looked more like a boy. Then she had a terrible accident. Required brain surgery at the age of 8. We took her to the mountains to recuperate. The little boy in the front was feeding a donkey. He was our next door neighbor. This is some of the beautiful waterfalls in the Pocono Mountains. This is called Child's Park. There's waterfalls all through the park. And bridges crossing them. And that was Charles Devlin with Susan and Beth. They were really blonde. And that's poor Kathy after her hair started to grow in. She really didn't like having her picture taken. And she looks like a praying Buddha. And we took her to a park in New York. I think it was called Freedom Land. It no longer exists, but it was like a small Disney World. That's Kathy posing with the Indian chief. There they were having a gun shootout in the middle of the street. Fortunately, no one's got hurt. The buckets rode across the top of the fairgrounds. And they're not real beaver, but they sure did look it. Even the moose seemed to be coming at our boat as we went past. And that bridge was about to tumble down. And that was a real ghost town. The old fort. This was supposed to represent the Civil War. These figures were not real. That was a hospital. And we're back home again. As long as Kathy wore dungarees, everyone thought she was a boy, so the short haircut didn't bother her too much. And at Christmas time, her hair began to grow in again. She went to visit Santa. She was very self-conscious when she'd have to wear a dress. More toys for our living room. Beth had to have a whole kitchen in the living room. Kathy enjoyed hand puppets and her little typewriter. Jimmy was a cowboy that year. He even got a bucking bronco. You guessed it, Easter time again. Bill, I told you not to put that picture in there. Now it's picnic time at Friends Hospital again. The children keep growing. Beth was proud as a rooster in that little outfit. More azaleas. Okay.
Yep. Hold on. Are you done?
Next door neighbors, the Devlins. Margaret was making her first Holy Communion. Picnic time again. remember who the baby was. Susan had lost her front teeth. This picture, she kept her mouth closed. Beth loved her red shoes and matching pocketbook. Didn't take much to make her pose. Kathy managed to smile a little. Her hair was beginning to get a little bit longer. That was Mother, and it must have been Easter, for she's wearing a violet corsage. That was Beth out front of our plum tree. Susan in the same spot. And of course, Kathy. Aunt Thelma didn't know what to do with all this food. So Beth decided she'd pose again under the plum tree.
Okay.
It was taken in the Pocono Mountains. See the deer in the foreground? Oh, it's time to go back to the zoo. I think this was taken at Hershey Park. Children had a good time anyway. And that was supposed to be the Chicago fire. It's back to Freedom Land in New York again, riding the Golden Dragon. This was such a great park. And we went down to the seashore. That's me coming in on a wave. And Beth with her long golden tresses. And Nana Graves had come up to spend some time with us again. She loved walking along the water's edge, trying to get different seashells. And of course, our annual trip to the Poconos. See more waterfalls. Back at Child's Park again. Nana Graves. And the girls in our backyard. We got a new car, a brand new car for the first time. Here they are in their fall outfits. With Nana Hunter. And me with my leopard skin hat and chic pocketbook. Now it's Thanksgiving at Aunt Thelma's house. We ate in the basement, but we really didn't care. There was plenty of room for all and lots of food. But time for another puppy. And our house was all now red and green for Christmas. That year we had snow. And that was Ripley Street. It looked so pretty. Almost all the homes were lit. This was Aunt Grace with one of her gentleman friends. They stopped in to wish us a Merry Christmas. Here we are again. You can see by now we had to knock out part of the living room wall just so we could get Christmas gifts in. Beth opening her stocking. I guess I hadn't opened my new slippers yet. And that was our dining room. With Aunt Grace and Uncle Butch and Bruce. And that zebra out there ice skating is Kathy. And the one in the hot pink in the back was Susan. There she goes. These were taken at Twopenny Park. Poor Beth, she didn't have ice skates. She just skidded. This is a birthday party of Kathy's. with Cousin Harry. Don't they look happy? Uncle Butch had an ice boat, and he took Daddy up to Bud Lake in northern Jersey to watch him sail. Now it's Easter time. And Nana Hunter again. Beth looked beautiful in pink. Kathy looked beautiful in pink. Poor Susan had to wear yellow. We couldn't find anything for her in pink. It must have been awfully funny. Outside in her Easter finery. And now we went to Expo 67 in Montreal, Canada. That's Kathy outside the Mexican Pavilion. The American Pavilion. Some of the displays. The big tire Ferris wheel. The wading pools. The Chrysler Exposition. The Port Authority. General Motors. Dinosaur Land. Another dinosaur or brontosaurus or whatever you call those things. The beautiful water fountains. This was the amusement park. See, it really shows up 79 when it's 80.